Enrichment, Enlightenment, Transformation. Rabbi Yisroel Cutler, the spiritual leader of Chabad of Cary, North Carolina, guides anyone who has been searching for a meaningful life and conscious living. Join our discussions about the mundane, our daily activities, and then infuse every day with a spiritual twist from the inspired sages of the Talmud and Jewish mysticism, which many call Kabbalah. We learn from the root source of all religious monotheistic traditions and delve into the symbolism and levels of meaning from biblical stories.
Wherever you may be throughout the world, our class today, September 27th, is dedicated in the memory of Shoshana Chana Bas Chava Erica, who passed away in the land of Israel just prior to Shabbos this week. And the learning should be zchus and merit for her neshama. Today's class is going to be about Yom Kippur because it is our last class before the high holidays. The next couple Tuesdays are full with the high holidays. So we did Rosh Hashanah last week, and those that were here last week, we redefined Teshuvah, Tefillah, Tzedakah as return, connection, and justice. So you can already take your high holiday prayer book and cross out repentance, prayer, and charity and replace it with return, connection, and justice. And we explained the meaning of each one. Today we're going to move on to Yom Kippur. And before we even start into the class, I want to say that Yom Kippur is meant to be an upbeat holiday, okay? And not joyous, but before we dive into the details, and today's class is a little more advanced with details, it's an amazing opportunity. The fact that God gives us a day to have this purity, this atonement, this cleansing, it's an incredible thing. Hashem says it's not that hard to do teshuvah. Just follow the necessary ingredients, regret, and confessing out loud, and fasting, like we will discuss, and you will have this incredible clean slate. So we should view it with optimism, with joy, how amazing the opportunity is. And by a human, if you mess up and you say you're sorry, and then you do the next thing, and the next time, and next time, after the third or fourth time, they'll be frustrated with you. But with God, year in and year out, we do the same thing. And you would think by now it's like, all right, I've had enough of you. And yet we say Hashem's rachamanos, Hashem's compassion is infinite because God is infinite. We're not bothering God. Baruch Hashem, thank God. But I just want to start off that way because yes, it's a serious day. Yes, we're supposed to be emotional. But there's a tinge, there's a taste of upbeatness to it. And we need that upbeatness because we can't get down on ourselves. We should have the simcha, we should have the happiness, knowing that when we finish this day, we truly, truly have this clean slate. So that's sort of my opening to the class, and I hope if there's one thing you remember, it is that, and when we approach the prayers of the day, yes, with the proper seriousness, but also with joy. Also with joy. Okay. In the Torah itself, scriptures, Bible itself, there's a lot about Yom Kippur, but the majority has to do with what happened in biblical times, which was a very labor-intensive day for the high priest. If you were a Kohen Gadol, this was your day. You had to go to serious training for everything that had to be done this day. This offering and that offering. The Kohen Gadol would visit a mikvah, a ritual bath, numerous times throughout the day. Change his clothes numerous times throughout the day. It was tough work. Not just physically, not just mentally, but spiritually too. But the majority of the scriptures discusses what the Kohen Gadol did. What information does the Torah tell us about Yom Kippur that's relevant for us today? How much? Is Kol Nidre mentioned? Yisker? What is mentioned?
Self-denial.
Okay. So a form of self-denial affliction. What else?
Not to wish.
Well, that's part of the self-denial. But How much does the Torah say spend the day in synagogue? What does the Torah actually tell us? 248. Why don't you do the first text for us?
You talking to me?
We'll start over here. I'm sorry.
Swallowing
Swallowing the sandwich.
Are you from New Jersey?
Yeah.
Talking to me. And all this shall be as an eternal statute for you. In the 7th month, on the 10th of the month, you shall afflict yourselves, and you shall not do any work, neither the native nor the stranger who dwells among you.
And now in the Torah, the word stranger is ger. Sometimes a ger refers to a non-Jew who lived amongst the Jews and lived by what's called the Noahide laws. Other times a ger refers to a convert to Judaism. And it's tricky to know which ger means what. In this context, what do you think it is?
Convert?
It is a convert, because someone who was not Jewish would not be obligated in the laws of Yom Kippur. They would be obligated to, live an ethical life, a moral life, but they were not obligated in Jewish holidays. So in this context, I don't love the translation of the stranger. It's not, but that is what ger refers to, a convert who dwells amongst you. Keep on reading.
Okay. For on this day he shall effect atonement for you to cleanse you. Before God you shall be cleansed from all your sins. It is a Shabbat of rest for you, and you shall afflict yourselves. It is an eternal statute.
Okay. Now it says it is the Shabbat of rest. Doesn't Shabbat mean rest? So what's the Hebrew there? Shabbat Shabbaton. It's the Shabbos of Shabbases. Relative to Shabbat, this is Shabbat. Okay? This is the Shabbat of all Shabbats. Which, by the way, is interesting that even when Yom Kippur falls out on Shabbat, it's still a regular Yom Kippur. We still fast and everything like that. Any other of the other fast days in Judaism that falls out on Shabbat, it gets pushed off. It gets pushed off. So, what are the three things that the Torah itself tells us? It's a day that we are supposed to do some form of self-denial or affliction, which we're going to see means fasting. No work. And the fact that it is a day that Hashem cleanses us. Those are the three components. Everything else comes later, okay? So, Kol Nidre and Yisker and all the traditions and the yard-side candle, and all that's good. But it's important to start off with what does the Torah actually tell us about the day. Similar to Rosh Hashanah, right? The apple and honey and the Shana Tova cards and all that is good. But what mitzvah does the Torah actually say you're supposed to do on Rosh Hashanah? Blow the shofar. That's it. So it's important to know. Why is that important? Because if someone has a choice between one or the other, and I'll give you an example, and this is an example that often comes up. Someone is relatively weak, strong enough that they can fast, but they don't fast well. They don't fast well. And they have a choice to use up a lot of energy and go to synagogue, or to stay home, but be able to fast. So logic might tell you, well, it should be a meaningful, and the meaningful experience can only happen in a synagogue, right? And that's where I'm going to be able to fully get involved in the spirit of the day and be inspired. And that might be true. But what does the Torah say you're supposed to do on this day? Fast. The mitzvah of the day is actually fasting. So obviously, God forbid, real medical situations that make one not able to fast, that's what life comes before this mitzvah. However, in other instances, the mitzvah of fasting actually comes first. And many times family members didn't make it to the second half of, well, in our case now, it's a little, we have a long walk, and it's very hard sometimes for Chanukah to fast and do that walk, which is why often on Yom Kippur she's not there a lot of the day or all the day. But even when I was growing up, I remember the second part of the day, there were times family members couldn't make it because when, you don't create the emergency to have to fast. Better, again, now, thank God for many of us were able to do both. That's great. That's great. But I want to say that the mitzvah the Torah says you're supposed to do on that day is fast. And we see a second time, a few chapters later in Vayikra, I'll paraphrase because of time. Again, on the 10th day, it's a day of atonement, a holy day, and you shall afflict yourselves. Don't do any labor, and it is a day of atonement. So it's oral tradition that tells us what the definition of afflicting oneself is. Doesn't mean you take whips.
No hair shirts?
Nope. And if you look at text 2, like many times in the oral tradition, it was a tradition that was passed down that said it's a day of fasting, but there was some hint to it in the written Torah as well. Okay, so scriptures hints to the fact that this means it. Why don't you do text 2 for us, please?
It is written concerning Yom Kippur, afflict your souls, and it is also written, I have afflicted my soul through fasting.
So that's a totally separate verse in Isaiah, but that same word afflicted is used. And what's the very next name? What's the next word afterwards? Through fasting. Keep on reading.
It is written further, why have we fasted, and you did not see? We have afflicted our soul, and you do not know. From here, it is evident that fasting is referred to as the affliction of the soul.
Okay, so throughout Torah, when we have this expression, "V'nitem et nafshotechem," you should afflict your soul, it is a reference to fasting. You know, and this is a very classic example of the authenticity of the oral tradition. Because, I mean, every Jew out there in the world knows, what does he do on Yom Kippur? You fast. There was never any doubt about that. And yet you might meet someone, oh, I don't believe in the oral tradition. Oh, you don't believe in the oral tradition? So what do you do on Yom Kippur? All the Torah says is, afflict yourself. So it's clear that that tradition was widespread, passed down throughout all the Jews. The key mitzvah of the day is fasting, even more important than the particular prayers that we do. The prayers that we do are nice. They add the feeling. They help us get into the mood of it. But the mitzvah of the day is fasting. And I guess our question today is why? What is it about fasting that is so essential to Yom Kippur? Now, the simple answer is that's what God says we're supposed to do. So Rosh Hashanah, we're supposed to blow a shofar. That's what we're supposed to, period. You can give reasons, but at the end of the day, blow the shofar. And on Sukkot, you eat in the sukkah, and Yom Kippur, you fast. But we know that while that may be true, we are supposed to find meaning and try to understand the mitzvahs as best we can. So what is our understanding for the reason that we fast on Yom Kippur? Especially keeping in mind that it's seen as the most important component of the holiday.
Isn't it like cleansing?
Well, let's hear thoughts. And there's no right or wrong here. Any thoughts? Brian, what do you think?
Yeah, I think part of it is we're exercising control over our animal self, our animal soul.
Good. So on a day in which you are, pledging to be better and saying, I regret my mistakes, you're saying you're already exercising control over that side of you. Interesting. So you're one step ahead. Good.
Well, I think, at least speaking for myself, fasting is very difficult.
Mm-hmm.
And it hurts.
It does.
And by doing it, you're telling God that I'm doing something very special and hurtful for you, for my love of you.
Beautiful. So you are giving up of something yourself, Dennis?
You have a better appreciation for food later.
That is true.
You do without it.
It's amazing. But you know what else it amazes me every time is when the fast is over and all it takes is a little bit, and all of a sudden it's like, oh, that's all I needed. It's an amazing feeling that I have afterwards, where it's like we're focused so much on food, and afterwards I have a little bit, a little something, and all of a sudden I have my energy back. And it's like, wow, it's so funny how dependent we are on this. It gives you a certain perspective towards food I have, but it does definitely give you more appreciation afterwards. Yeah. Any other thoughts? Yeah, Pam?
We need to first realize that our bodies have all the needs, and we can't survive one day without giving in to all of our body wants and just concentrate a little bit less on that physical self.
Right. So, yeah, you survived. You made it. You're okay. It's we often tell ourselves, but we need it, right? We need it. No, maybe you don't always need it. That's good. These are all good thoughts. I like these. These are all good thoughts. So let's look at some of the classic answers that are given. And I think it's a good question to think about, especially because there are times, I know for myself, where I'd be able to focus on the prayers a lot more if I had a little bit to eat. So let's try to have a deeper appreciation. So we're going to give 3 answers. I will say the historical answer, the moral ethical answer, and then the third one is going to be the more mystical Kabbalistic answer. So the historical answer is interesting. The historical answer is that there's something that actually happened on Yom Kippur. What happened on Yom Kippur in our history? Yeah.
God.
and it was the complete forgiving of the Jewish people. There was already the there's always the remainder that okay.
You're not going anywhere.
Okay. But at the beginning it was forgiving, I won't wipe out the people. And then it was forgiving and somewhat of the same relationship. And then Yom Kippur was forgiving and what else? Getting the second set of luchot. Moses comes down with the second tablets on Yom Kippur. We know the first tablets was with a lot of paparazzi, a lot of excitement. It didn't end off very well, right? Moshe comes with the second tablets on Yom Kippur. There's an interesting verse that the Torah says after the giving of the first tablets. And it's one we don't see often because it's not in the parsha that discusses the Ten Commandments. It's the next parsha. The next parsha is the law of Mishpatim. It goes through all the laws. But at the way end of the parsha of Mishpatim, it gives us a little more info about the giving of the Torah. And it says that right after the Jews had the Ten Commandments, you know what they did? Let me get a chumash out. I don't think we've ever quoted this verse before in our classes. Yeah. It's at the way end of. Why don't we read it? Do you mind reading the pasuk, please? Read text 3. Or Hal, were you reading? Where were we up to? Hal, please.
And you shall afflict your souls. When the first set of tablets were given, it is written, to the elders of the Jewish people, they perceived God as they ate and drank. And it was the result of this excessive eating and drinking that they came to worship the golden calf. Therefore God decreed a fast on the day the latest set of tablets were given, which is Yom Kippur.
Wow.
So there was like a little party that went on that sort of created this atmosphere of, I guess, frivolous nature, excess, whatnot. And the second time, the second time we're going to have the second tablets come, but in a far more solemn, quiet, spiritual sort of setting. So this is a historical answer. I'd never heard this before today, or a few days ago when I was preparing this class. It's just not something new. Okay, let's now go to the second perspective that is given. The second perspective given is by a book called the Chinuch. The Chinuch outlines each of the 613 mitzvot. It was written in the 1200s by an anonymous author. Someone went through the 613 mitzvot, gave a little explanation on each, and gave the why of each one. And it's studied until today, but there are different theories who the author is. They give one possibility. We don't know whether that is the real author or not. But in any event, the Chinuch writes, Mitzvah 313, not 613, but 313. Yes?
To fast on the 10th day of Tishrei, which is called Yom Kipur, as it says. On the 10th day of the month, you shall afflict your souls. Among the reasons for this mitzvah is that God, in his kindness toward all of his creations, set one day a year for them to atone for all their sins through tshuva. Therefore, we were commanded to fast on this day. Since food, drink, and other tangible pleasures all induce the material flesh to be drawn after base desires and sin, they impede the intellectual soul from searching after the truth, which is God's service and his teachings that are good and sweet to all people of knowledge. It is appropriate for a servant.
Inappropriate.
Oh, yeah. It is inappropriate for a servant on the day of his judgment to come before his master with his soul obscured and addled by food and drink, and with thoughts of the flesh within him. One is judged by his actions at the time of his judgment, and therefore it is appropriate to strengthen one's soul, which is wise, and to subjugate the flesh to it on that solemn day, so that it is worthy and ready to receive its atonement, and not be obstructed by the veil of desires.
So saying almost like, it's not a Hasidic text that talks about having an animal soul and a godly soul, but it's similar.
Yeah.
We have the intellectual side of ourselves. We have the more materialistic side of ourselves. And the same way when you exercise your body, then you're stronger, right? So when you exercise your palate, when you food, that side of you becomes stronger. So he writes on Yom Kippur, which is a day dedicated to connection with God and whatnot, we want to take it easy on our materialistic needs. You read this and it's like, why couldn't we just have a little bit, just enough, a little, maybe just bread and water, just something to,
I'd be good with just water.
just water, something just to let us, we're not going overboard. But this is one perspective that's given, and this is the classic one given, that we are trying to weaken one side of us in order that we can be more attuned to our spiritual needs. So this is something the medieval Jewish scholars said. Many of them were also in philosophy. Text 5 by the Abarbanel, 1400s, says something very similar. He goes a step further and he says it's not just food, but we know as there's actually different categories of things. No food, no drink. It says that we don't engage in acts of intimacy, sexual relations on Yom Kippur. There's also we do not fully bathe, and we don't anoint ourselves. So he writes, the Abarbanel writes that, let's do it inside, 252 Anne.
True affliction of the soul refers to a person causing pain to himself by denying his desires for food, drink, sexual, and other pleasures, whether by remorse for abhorrent deeds, concern for their repercussions, or by rebuking oneself for the depravity of its desires. All of this, and not just fasting, is true affliction of the soul. It emerges that affliction is a general term for anything that pains the soul. Therefore, God commanded, "You shall afflict yourselves, and you shall offer up a fire offering to God." That means that you should afflict yourselves with teshuvah, remorse by abandoning wicked deeds, and ceasing evil thoughts. For all of this is included in the affliction of the soul. And through this, you will bring a fire offering to God. This is achieved by fasting, because an offering is made of their own blood and fat that was reduced by the
Fascinating. So he writes, even though today we don't have the physical offerings, someone here mentioned it in the room, by us fasting, we are giving up of ourselves. Right? We are bringing the offering, so to speak, from our animal, from ourself. So he touches on a very similar thought of the previous text of weakening the materialistic side of us, but he goes a step further. There's value itself in the affliction. We're giving up of ourselves, and we'll hold it over there. And that's the juxtaposition between affliction of the soul and fire offering. So who is the karban? Who are we bringing? Ourselves via the fasting. God, I'm willing. Someone here said it's hard for us. It's hard for us. I'm willing to do this for you. I'm willing to give this up. I'm, so to speak, sacrificing my needs on the holiday of Yom Kippur. Okay, that's the second. Yes. Yes.
I just have a question. We don't fully bathe on Yom Kippur, yet the high priest went to the mikveh multiple times. So it seems like that contrast is just
Interesting. Correct.
Well,
No shampoo.
but there are also the differences. The mikvah is not about physical cleanliness.
Right.
It's spiritual cleanliness.
Yeah.
And
That's true.
maybe, I just draw that distinction.
Very good. Very good.
So last night we were talking about evil thoughts are not a sin. And here it says, by ceasing evil thoughts. So
In the evil thoughts are not good.
it would seem to lead you down that road.
Evil thoughts are not good. Obviously, the fact that it doesn't manifest itself in the world is better than it manifesting itself in the world, right? But in the Shema, it says, you shall not stray after your eyes and your thoughts.
Oh,
So we are supposed to do what we can to control it. Thought is the hardest of, there's thought, speech, and action. Thought is the most difficult to control because there's no off switch.
right. That's true.
It's also
There's no off switch.
It's also the source of action.
But correct. But there's places that say, on one hand, you might say, hey, it's the least important because you don't actually affect other people. The flip side is, it is deep inside of you, and where your thought is very much affects every other part of you. So it actually, in a way, if I ask, interesting question, if I ask which soils the soul more, bad deeds or bad thoughts? I don't know. I'm just throwing this question. In terms of which one soils the soul more in its mission in the world, what's the answer to that? Deed. Because at the end of the day, we live in the physical world. Our job is to make this physical world better. And that's what's most important, the way we interact with other people. That being said, as far as our own soul's relationship with its thought, speech, and action, ironically, thought lies closest to it. If you think of layers around the soul. And as a result, bad thoughts can have an effect. Torah does say, do not hate your brother in your heart. Remember that? It's a verse in the Torah. Torah does talk about the prohibition of lewd thoughts. That's not, it's not like, as long as it's in my mind, it's okay. Now, obviously, it's better than acting on it. That's for sure. But that still doesn't mean it's okay. So that's a little parenthetical. So, but and yet, yeah. Okay, very good. Very good. Hal has the off switch, so. But typically, for most of us that have not discovered it, the off switch is instead of a replace switch, right? You don't turn it off, you replace it for another thought. When you say, hey, don't think that, and someone once said, if I tell everyone in the room, don't think of an elephant, it's, well, now that you mention it, yeah, so that's a little bit about thought. Let's go back here. There was another thought about this text about giving of yourself. Was there another thought around the room? Someone wanted to share something?
Well,
yes.
Just that when you think something evil, you're poisoning yourself.
Mm-hmm. Correct. So the poison to yourself is affected very strongly by bad thoughts. Yeah. Okay.
I'm sorry, but what about cognitive therapy? I mean, you start thinking things, negative things, and you start then it starts affecting your whole self-image and your whole,
Absolutely. So
thoughts are powerful.
They are very powerful. So you might say they themselves may not be as bad as the bad act, but what they lead to, what they cause. Okay. Returning here, we've given two answers. A historical answer, which was the first time the Jews got the tablets. They celebrated. It led to bad things. So the second time, let's not do that. The ethical, moral answer is we are trying to exercise self-control, or we're trying to give up of ourselves, or we're trying to weaken our materialistic side of ourselves and attune ourselves into the spiritual side. But the common denominator out of both of these answers is that it's almost like coming to terms with human weakness, right? It's like there's nothing really meaningful about fasting, but it's a good way for you not to get carried away in materialistic side. There's not value in the fasting itself. It's that being that we're humans, and we have these desires. Therefore, God says, I'll help you out a little bit, and I'll give you a day where you're not involved in food. And that's amazing. You have a lot of extra time when you don't have to eat. Ever notice that? How much of our life? Anyways. But both of those answers are answers, but they don't give us an inherent value of fasting. And we're going to spend our last 15 minutes on the spiritual Kabbalistic answer for what fasting is supposed to do. And this one is a little bit more positive. Not to keep us away from our materialism, but something more positive. Let's go to text 7a. So the Kohen Gadol, the high priest, had a very busy day in Yom Kippur. What did he actually do in the Holy of Holies? Did he walk in, take pictures? No, only there once a year. He walked into the Holy of Holies. This was a place that was off limits the rest of the year. Watch Indiana Jones, right? And the Ark. Proceed with caution. What did he actually do when he was in the Holy of Holies?
We don't know.
Well, that's one thing we do know. He would speak God's name.
Okay, so he would say certain prayers. What else would he bring inside of there? Verse 7a. Page 256.
And God said to Moses, speak to your brother Aaron, that he should not come at all times into the holy within the dividing curtain in front of the cover that is on the ark, so that he should not die. For I appear over the cover in cloud.
So to explain, there was the temple. In the main room of the temple, where there was the menorah, there was a table, there was a little altar there, and then there was a curtain. Behind the curtain was the Ark of the Covenant. That's where God's presence rested the strongest. God is everywhere, but God's divine presence rested there. So this command is, Aaron is not allowed to go there because God's presence rests, again, this is not literal, but in a cloud. So the Midrash writes, you can't go there typically because God's presence is there. The one time you do come, what does the verse instruct Aaron to bring? They didn't bring an animal sacrifice offering in there. What took place in the Holy of Holies? Incense. Are you familiar with this? Do the next text, 256. Barbara, please. 7b.
For I appear in a cloud, for I continuously appear there with my pillar of cloud, and therefore, since my divine presence is revealed there, he must be careful not to accustom himself to anything. This is simple.
The simple meaning is the cloud refers to God's divine presence. But the Midrash, according to the Midrash, keep on reading.
According to the Midrash, he shall not come except with the cloud of incense
On Yom Kippur, because what else happened on Yom Kippur? The verse continues, 7c, while he's in the Holy of Holies, he brings burning coals, and he brings this frying pan with incense. The word in Hebrew for incense is ktoret, and he brings it, this hot pan, in the Holy of Holies, and he places the pan on top of the ark, after which point the entire Holy of Holies became enveloped. It wasn't a big room. It became enveloped with smoke from the ktoret, from the incense. So the one offering that he did, it wasn't an animal offering, it was this ktoret, this incense, which we don't make today. You know, the Torah gives us a recipe. Don't try it at home. It says we don't even know what all the ingredients are, but there were 11 different ingredients.
Is that pitumah k'tol?
Yes,
What
yes.
we read on 12?
Those ingredients made up this mixture, and people got high from it. No, I'm joking. Sorry. What? Maybe they did. So there were 11 spices. I don't know if any of them were. This was seen as a very spiritual experience, this Torah. So the only thing he did in the Holy of Holies was the Torah. I want to skip a few texts now.
Question.
Yes.
The cloud is that Shekinah.
Correct. Shekinah, God's presence. Correct. So typically, during the rest of the year, and even on Yom Kippur, the offerings, at least in biblical times, were made out of what? What were the offerings? Animals. Okay? Or birds, but animals. That took place on an altar that was outside the main room. There was the main room, and then there was the courtyard. On the courtyard, there was a big altar, and they brought a lot of animals there. So outside, animals. Inside on Yom Kippur, it was incense. Outside, incense. Animals, and that. And what is the word for offering in Hebrew? What is sacrifice, offering? What's the word in Hebrew? Korban, a korban. Korban. What does korban literally mean? Close. Bringing a korban means getting close to God. What does the word close mean? Two entities that interact with each other in somewhat of a close proximity to one another. That's what close means. What's the word in Hebrew for incense? It's a little bit deeper, and you should have. Do you have a chart in a few pages over here? Korban versus Ktoret?
No.
Not good. I need a PowerPoint for this, which I do not have. Okay. The word in Hebrew for ketoret, which means incense, comes from the Hebrew word likshor, kesher. What is a kesher? A knot. What is the difference between close and a knot? A knot is also close, but it becomes one. Okay.
Dating versus marriage.
There we go. I like that. Dating versus marriage. So there's two different interactions with God. There is karban, two entities interacting with one another, sacrificing for one another, right? That takes place with animals, and that happens outside. On Yom Kippur, it was incense, which in Hebrew means knot or connection, happening inside the Holy of Holies. What is the difference? Let us read how the Rebbe explains this on page 259. Page 9, text 9a.
It has been explained in various texts that there is a broad fundamental distinction between the sacrificial rite performed on the altar, and the Ketoret rite on the inner altar.
They never had animals on the inner altar. The inner altar was always incense. Okay.
Offering sacrifices.
Oh, one more interesting distinction. What were the altars made out of? It doesn't say that here. Anyone know the difference? Outside was copper. Inside was gold. Yeah. With gold. Keep on reading.
Offering sacrifices on the altar symbolizes the sublimation of the physical to God. Man's impact on the objects of the world outside of himself, elevating them to God. However, the eternal future of Ketoret on the inner altar is not about sublimating physical matter. Rather, the priest's entry within the sanctuary is to experience Ketoret and connection with God through this offering of fire, incense, and cloud.
So the outer altar, now this is a little deep here. I know this is a little deep. The outer altar is elevating our what? Our animalistic side. That's when we still have these negative tendencies. We're dealing with our animal. We put the animal on the outer altar. It's God. I feel a little bit separate, distant from you. I'm trying to get closer to you. Here, I'm doing this for you. I'm giving up of my animal. But then there's another very different experience, and that's when you're plugged in. You're working on not getting rid of your animal, but connecting deeper, love for God, all from God, fine-tuning your connection. That is Yom Kippur. That is Yom Kippur. Think of the difference in a relationship. Let's say you're in a job. In a regular job, you're karov, you're close. You're doing something for them. You're expecting something in return. Most jobs, even if you love what you do, there's still you, and then there's them. And there's always this give and take. There's always a give and take. In a marriage, there's always, I'm doing this for you, but I expect you to do this. It's not going to work very well, right? Marriages work when you begin to see each other, see yourself as one. And if you're not there, then that's what you need to discover. So Ketoret is not an association with something. It's an identification. You identify now with that deeper thing inside of you. So the main, so here's an example. So imagine there's a wife that makes chicken soup for Shabbat. Thursday, tells her husband, going to sleep, hey, I want to let this cool down before, ever happen? You ever do this? Before you go to sleep, put it in the fridge, right? Because I don't want it, I don't want to put it in the fridge right away.
You don't want it standing out.
Correct. And what does the husband do? Forgets to put it in the fridge, and they get nervous, and the next morning, and a huge fight breaks out over the chicken soup. So, no, I'm just throwing this possibility out. Huge fight that, God forbid, threat, So the husband can do a few things. He can try to quickly whip up another instant soup. That's not going to work very well. He's going to try running to the store and buying some soup. He can try to explain why it wasn't his fault. But ultimately, teshuvah will only be, the real reconciliation will only happen when they reveal in each other a relationship that's deeper than The chicken soup, right? If it's about the chicken soup, we have a problem. If you're able to reveal how you really won, then that's able to go deeper than the chicken soup. So that is sort of what Yom Kippur is about. And I know we're running out of time over here. On Yom Kippur, what we do is we reveal our essential connection with God. A connection that even goes beyond, I did this right, or I did that right, or I messed up here, or I messed up there. And when you reveal that connection, guess what happens? Everything else melts away. It's not about those details anymore. It's not about those specifics anymore. So on Yom Kippur, it's not a day in which we're trying to fine-tune this aspect of our animal or that aspect. We got to do that too. It's on our soul plugging into God. It is a day where the soul has its own connection to God, and it's almost like animal soul, have a good check out for 24 hours. Check out for 24 hours. Now, ideally, if someone is on a high spiritual level, they feel this. And if they feel this, guess what? As text 11 on 265 writes, Brian, this was a quote from Rabbi Levi Yitzchak of Berditchev when he discusses the two most important fast days, page 11, text 11, 265.
In truth, we don't need to be commanded regarding the fasting. On
Tisha B'Av,
who can eat? And on Yom Kippur, who wants to eat?
you see that? Tisha B'Av is the day we mourn the destruction of the temple. He says on Tisha B'Av, if someone's really attuned to the day, then who is able to eat? Again, a metaphor for this might be, imagine watching a Holocaust film, okay? Schindler's List. You can sit there with a bag of popcorn while you watch Schindler's List. You can't. You ever, God forbid, not God forbid, you go to a Holocaust museum right afterwards. All right, what's for lunch? Let's go to this restaurant. After you go to the Holocaust museum, right? So he says, if you're really attuned to Tisha B'Av, who can eat? And what does he say about Yom Kippur? So for some people, they're so attuned to the holiness of the day, then guess what? Correct. The same way when you're involved in a project, you have a deadline, you throw yourself into something, you're in a great relationship, you forget about the fact that you even have to eat. That's supposed to happen on Yom Kippur. You're so attuned to your neshama. The problem is for most of us, we don't feel that, so we do a little reverse engineering. So we don't eat in order that we can tap into the essence of the day, and the essence of the day is animal soul. Just check out for 24 hours. Just leave for 24 hours. It just means God. And on that level, we don't have to eat.
You hope it stays gone longer.
I know that. We have to, yeah. The problem is there's often the disconnect, right? Between the feelings that people have on Yom Kippur.
It's better for it to last longer than 24 hours.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a story. There was someone that went to this, they were molding statues somewhere. They were like, it was a famous sculpture, and there was one beautiful statue with very distinct features, and the other sculpture was very blah, and it just barely had anything. It goes, they allowed it to cool too quickly. They allowed it to cool too quickly. Well, that's what happens on Yom Kippur, unfortunately. Sometimes things cool too quickly, which doesn't allow us to take the heat of the day and apply it to our real bodies and our real life. But so Rabbi Levi Yitzchak's point is in Yom Kippur, who wants to eat? So now we've come to the third and deepest reason of fasting on Yom Kippur. It's not a day of the animal offerings. It's a day of our neshama, inside, just us and God. And I will conclude with the last text, and that is going to be, it's a long lesson, Ne'ilah 270. The closing prayer of Yom Kippur is called Ne'ilah. Ne'ilah means what? The Talmud writes 270.
It is explained in the Jerusalem
Text
Talmud.
17.
It is explained in the Jerusalem Talmud. There are those who say that the name Ne'ilah refers to the closing of the temple gates, while some say that it refers to the closing of the gates of heaven, which are closed towards evening with the conclusion of the prayer.
That's the one you always hear. The gates are closing. This is the last time. The gates are closing. Comes along the Hasidic spin and says something beautiful. You might have heard this from me before. The gates are closing. There's only us and God. Not that we're on this side of the gate. We're on the inside of the gate. In the moment of Ne'ilah is when we have our yichidut, we have our one-on-one, where there's nothing else in the world that exists other than us at God. Think about eating at that time. So that sort of concludes the class. 3 perspectives on fasting, whether it's a historical one, whether it's that we're trying to weaken our animalistic side of ourselves and we're trying to sacrifice of ourselves, or the third one, we're trying to get to a place where for one day only, we're just living with our soul. And to help us do that, we totally leave behind food. And let me conclude with the way I started. It should be a solemn day, but it should also be a happy day, knowing what an incredible opportunity Yom Kippur is each and every year. And we will conclude it. We will not be having lunch and learn the next few weeks. Perhaps Sukkot will be our next class, and everyone, I'll send out an email when that will be. Shana Tova.
So is the incense
So Shana Tova.
brought into the Holy of Holies, or is
Ye-
it because that part about fire?
It was already hot. It seems like it was already hot when he came in. Shana Tova, and
And
for all the online community listening, Amnon, are there any questions or comments?
No, I was just going to say Shana Tova and Gmar Chatima Tova to everybody.
Amen. Thank you so much, Amnon, and thank you to anyone listening in, and Nissan Communications for making this program possible today. Have a good day.
You are tuned to the Nissan Communications Network. Our weekly lineup of call-in programs includes Computers 2K Now with Amnon Nissan, My Life, My Will with Gisela DiCarlo, The Tanya Love Show, Health Then with Debbie Bruck, Breaking Free with Marilyn Shannon, Triangle Be Well with Howard Jacobson, Lunch and Learn with Rabbi Yisrael Cutler, Lessons of Vietnam with NCVVI members, Current Affairs with Amnon Nissan. And if you tuned in too late, you can always watch each program in its entirety or download an MP3 audio file of it in the archives section on nissancommunications.com. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel, follow us on Twitter, and like us on Facebook. Sponsored by Atomos.com, makers of quality video recorders and converters, CarolinaApparel.com, and DeltaForce.net.